Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're doing this lesson. Today we'll be talking about the prophet Elijah. Um, and I pictured him here being taken up by the fiery chariot and his servant Elisha watching. In eighth grade, you'll remember when we talked about Elisha, him being bald, the kids making fun of him being bald, and a bear coming out to eat the kids. But that's just a little side note. Before we start, Ms. Flores would like to surprise Miss Reynolds by having May 1st Principal's Day with little videos from you guys. So if you would send her little videos, she included her email address. Send her little short videos, thank you, Miss Reynolds, or whatever you would like to do. But before we can get started, we have to answer our questions, and we have 4 questions today. The first question is, what prophet married a prostitute? What prophet has the saying, "Come back to me"? What prophet called the women of Israel cows? And what prophet was a shepherd? I gave you a little hint on the last one. Okay, so Elijah. Well, Elijah doesn't have his own book. Now, in the old days, years and years and years before the Bible was put together, Elijah was his own book, okay? But now he's included in the book of Kings. And he is the prophet during the time of the king Ahab and Ahab's wife Jezebel. So you would find Elijah in the first book of Kings, right around chapter 17. The first thing Elijah does is he proclaims a drought. Now the drought is significant because Ahab is not worshiping Yahweh, is not worshiping God. He is worshiping Baal. Now Ahab does not recognize Elijah as a prophet. He never calls Elijah a prophet. And that's because Elijah has called down this drought. And Baal is supposed to be the god of rain. And the fact that Elijah could do this, Ahab is kind of mystified, and people are mystified. But Ahab says, oh, it's not because Baal isn't real. It's because Baal is mad because of Elijah. Um, So the fact that Elijah can call down a drought shows that he is a man of God. The drought's pretty significant. The people have to even slaughter their livestock because not only do they need the meat, but the livestock drinks the water, and that's how short the water is. And so we come across the story of Elijah and the widow. Um, he meets the widow and um, asks them asks her what she's doing, and she's gathering sticks to prepare a meal for her and her son to have one last meal before they die. And Elijah asks for some water and a little cake from her. Now, this lady just has enough resources to make her child and herself a cake, and it's like a little bread, a little flat bread, and then they're gonna die. And so this guy walks up and says, "Oh, can you give me some water and make me a cake?" Which is kind of weird, but she doesn't. And he says, "Look, if you do this, your jar of flour and your jar of oil will never run dry until the drought is over with." So she doesn't, and sure enough, um, it never happens. It never runs out. Later on, the boy is dying, and Elijah lays across him, and he comes back to life. And so it's at that point that the widow realizes that Elijah is from God, and she calls him at that point the man of God. Now, then we have the story of Elijah on Mount Carmel. So Ahab really wants to kill Elijah, can't get his hands on him. Jezebel, as a result, she kills all the prophets of Yahweh. So Elijah challenges the prophets of Baal to a contest. They go up to Mount Carmel. They each have a cow. They slaughter it, put it on an altar, and the god that can start a fire for the sacrifice wins. Well, the prophets of Baal, they shout and yell and everything to their God. And Elijah even makes fun of him. He says, "Why don't you shout louder? Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's not awake." And they keep shouting and shouting to the point where they fall out. So Elijah then takes water, puts it around his cow, puts it on top of his cow, calls down the fire. The fire consumes the cow completely. So this shows that he is the true prophet. Later on, he goes along. He meets Elisha, who becomes his servant, and later on takes over as prophet. Now, I'm mispronouncing it. It should really be Elijah, but you have to make some kind of distinction between the two. They cross the Jordan. When they cross the Jordan, Elijah takes off of his cloak and hits the Jordan, and the Jordan splits. Now, you remember that's to kind of remind you of the Red Sea, and it also reminds you of when the tabernacle crossed the Jordan. It also split. So Elijah says, "Hey, look, Elisha, stay here." He walks up further and drops his cloak. And at that point, a fiery chariot comes out of the sky, picks up Elijah, and takes him to heaven. And Elisha continues on with Elijah's cloak. And Jewish people believed that Elijah would return before the Messiah would come. And so there was a lot of speculation, was John the Baptist, Elijah, that type of thing. So I just wanted to mention that because as we get closer to the New Testament, we'll be talking more about that. So I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.